The book was never meant for everyone. There is a reason ancient teachers hid their deepest knowledge in symbols, myths, and forbidden books. Because some truths are dangerous when they are heard too early. Not because they destroy the world outside you, but because they destroy the false world inside you. Imagine an old book resting beneath a thin layer of dust. Its cover is cracked. Its pages are marked with strange symbols. And written on the first page is a warning. Do not open this unless you are ready to see reality differently. Most people would close the book, because most people do not want the truth. They want comfort. They want the world to change while they remain the same. They want money, love, success, peace, and power to appear from the outside, without ever questioning the invisible state they are carrying within. But this ancient knowledge teaches something different. It says reality is not as solid as you were trained to believe. It says the outer world is not merely happening to you. It is responding to you, to your perception, to your attention, to your emotional state. The silent assumptions you repeat until they become law. And most of all, to the identity you keep choosing every day without realizing it. This is not motivation. This is not fantasy. This is initiation. To bend reality does not mean controlling every event, forcing every outcome, or pretending pain does not exist. It means understanding the hidden relationship between your inner world and the world that answers back. It means realizing that your thoughts are not private. Your attention is not passive. Your emotions are not random. Your words are not empty. And your identity is not fixed. Every day you are giving reality instructions, not only through what you say out loud, but through what you believe in silence, through what you expect before anything happens, through what you assume you deserve, through the version of yourself you continue to obey. This is why two people can stand in the same circumstance and enter two different futures. One sees failure, the other sees a doorway. One sees rejection, the other sees redirection. One sees delay, the other sees preparation. The event may be the same, but the reality they enter is not. The ancient book does not ask you to escape life. It asks you to become conscious inside life. It asks you to stop begging reality to change while you keep feeding the old identity that created the same patterns again and again. Because reality does not first change so you can become new. You become new, and reality begins to lose permission to treat you like the old version of yourself. So before this journey begins, write these words below. I shape reality from within, not as a wish, not as a performance, but as a declaration. Tonight, the book opens. The first page is not written in ink. It is written in your attention. The second page is not hidden in a library. It is hidden in the way you see yourself. And the final page will reveal the truth most people avoid their entire lives. You were never only living inside reality. You were participating in its creation. Chapter 1, the first page. The world is not fixed. The first page of the ancient book does not begin with a spell. It begins with a crack, a small fracture in the way you were taught to see the world. Across the top of the page, written in dark, faded ink, are 7 words. The world is not fixed. At first, the sentence feels impossible, because everything around you seems solid. The room you are sitting in, the city beyond your window, the money in your account, the history behind you, the people who stayed, the people who left, the opportunities that opened, the doors that closed. It all feels real, it all feels heavy, it all feels final. And because of this, most people move through life as if reality is a locked room. They wake up inside the same patterns, the same thoughts, the same emotional weather, and eventually they whisper the most dangerous sentence a person can repeat. This is just how my life is. The ancient book warns you about this sentence, not because it sounds hopeless, but because it sounds like agreement. When you say, "This is just how my life is," you are not only describing your reality, you are giving it permission to continue. You are signing your name beneath the old pattern. You are allowing the present moment to become the blueprint of your future. This is the first illusion that must break. Reality is not only made of events. Reality is made of events and the meaning you give to them. Two people can stand in the same storm and live in two different worlds. One sees punishment, the other sees cleansing. One sees an ending, the other sees a doorway. One sees proof that life is against them, the other sees a signal that life is redirecting them. The storm is the same, but the reality they enter is not. In the winter of 1933, on the south side of Chicago, there were 2 men who worked in the same printing warehouse. Their names were Samuel and Thomas. Each morning before sunrise, they walked through the same cold streets, past the same brick buildings, beneath the same gray sky. From the outside, Their lives looked almost identical. They worked the same hours, they earned the same wage. They carried the same tiredness in their shoulders. They both had families waiting at home. They both worried about rent. They both counted dollars carefully at the kitchen table. They both lived in a country still trembling from economic collapse. Then one Friday afternoon, the warehouse owner gathered the workers near the loading dock. His face was pale. His voice was low. The company was closing. There would be no more work after that week. Samuel and Thomas heard the same sentence, but they did not enter the same reality. Samuel felt the words land inside him like a final judgment. Before he even left the warehouse, he had already decided what the event meant. It meant he was unlucky. It meant life could not be trusted. It meant every effort he had ever made was pointless. It meant the world was cold, unfair, and closed. That night, when he sat at his kitchen table, he did not only bring home the loss of a job, he brought home a meaning. He looked at his wife and said, "This is what always happens to people like us." Notice the sentence. Not this happened, but this always happens. In one breath, Samuel turned an event into a law. And once an event becomes a law inside the mind begins searching for evidence. Over the next few weeks, Samuel walked through Chicago looking for work. But he was not truly looking with open eyes. He was looking through the belief that life had already rejected him. When a shop owner said, "We are not hiring," Samuel heard, "You are not wanted." When no one answered his letters, he heard, "Nothing ever changes." His world became harder, not only because the time was difficult, but because his perception had become a prison. Every event, neutral or painful, was forced to serve the meaning he had already chosen. Thomas walked home through the same cold streets with the same fear in his chest. He was not pretending. He was not smiling over disaster. He was not calling pain an illusion. Ancient knowledge does not ask you to deny what hurts. Thomas felt the uncertainty. He felt the pressure. He felt the weight of explaining to his wife that the paycheck was ending. But that night, after the house grew quiet, he sat alone by the kitchen window and asked a different question. Not, "Why is life punishing me?" but, "What is this forcing me to see?" That question became the hinge on which his reality turned. For years, Thomas had wanted to open a small repair shop. He had always been good with machines. He could fix presses, clocks, radios, and the small mechanical things neighbors brought to him after work. But the safety of the warehouse had kept him asleep inside a life that was familiar, even if it was not truly alive. The job loss did not feel like a blessing, not at first. It felt like a door slamming shut. But because Thomas did not immediately turn the event into a prophecy of failure, another meaning had room to enter. Maybe this is not the end. Maybe this is the interruption that reveals the hidden path. Maybe life is not closing around me. Maybe life is breaking the shell. Within a month, Thomas began repairing radios from a corner of his apartment. At first, it was small, a neighbor, then a cousin, then a man from church, then a shop owner who needed help with electrical equipment. There was no lightning strike, no miracle in the sky, no golden road appearing overnight. Just a different meaning, repeated long enough to create different choices. And different choices, repeated long enough, began to create a different life. Beneath the first sentence on the page, the ancient book carries a second warning. The event may wound you once, but the meaning you attach to it can wound you for years. This is why the first page is dangerous. Because once you see it, you can no longer pretend that your interpretations are harmless. You may not control every event that enters your life. A lost job matters, a heartbreak matters, a failed business matters, a betrayal matters, a closed door matters. This teaching is not denial, it is responsibility. The event may arrive without your permission, but the meaning must pass through you. This is where reality begins to bend. Not outside first, inside first. Most people believe reality is the event itself. But ancient knowledge says reality is the event passing through the consciousness that receives it, and consciousness is never passive. The meaning you choose shapes your emotion shapes your attention shapes your behavior shapes your results, and your results return to you as evidence that your original meaning was true. This is how a single interpretation becomes a destiny. A person who believes life is against them will unconsciously search for enemies. A person who believes love always leaves will notice distance faster than devotion. A person who believes money is always hard will approach opportunity with tension, suspicion, and fear. A person who believes they are always behind will turn every success into pressure instead of gratitude. And when life reflects that state back to them, they will say, "See, I knew it," but they did not know it. They practiced it. They rehearsed it. They repeated it until reality had no choice but to echo it back. Look at nature. A river meets a stone in its path. To the eye, the river appears blocked. But the river does not stop and declare, "My journey is over." It does not curse the stone. It does not deny the stone. It does not pretend the stone is not there. It bends, it curves. It listens to the shape of what stands before it and finds another way toward the sea. The stone is real, but it is not final. The obstacle exists, but it does not have the last word. The river does not overcome by force. It overcomes by remaining fluid. This is the first secret of bending reality. You do not bend reality by pretending nothing happened. You bend reality by refusing to let what happened become the only meaning available to you. Perhaps you have done this without realizing it. Perhaps someone left your life and you decided, "I am hard to love." Perhaps money became tight and you decided, "I will never be safe." Perhaps a dream failed and you decided, "I am not meant for more." Perhaps someone criticized you and you decided, "I should stay small." The event passed, but the meaning stayed. And because the meaning stayed, part of your reality stayed with it. This is why many people are not trapped by the past itself. They are trapped by the interpretation of the past they keep obeying. The ancient book does not ask you to erase your history. It asks you to stop worshiping the meaning that was born from your wound, because pain can speak. But pain does not always tell the truth. Fear can speak. But fear often mistakes protection for prophecy. Disappointment can speak, but disappointment often calls a pause a permanent ending. This is why the conscious creator must learn to pause before meaning hardens into identity. When something happens, there is a sacred moment before the mind explains it. A small space, a breath, a doorway. Most people rush through that doorway unconsciously. Something happens, and within seconds the old mind begins its work. This means I failed. This means they do not care. This means money never stays. This means I am behind. This means life is not listening. But the one who understands the first page does something different. They pause. They breathe. They do not deny the event. They do not suppress the emotion, but they refuse to crown the first fearful meaning as king. They ask, "Is there another way to see this? Is there another reality hidden inside this moment? What would my future self understand here that my wounded self cannot yet see?" This question is not small. This question is a key. Because the moment you ask it, reality is no longer a locked room. It becomes a hallway with more than one door, and that is where freedom begins. Think of your life right now, not as a fixed sentence, but as a page still being written. There may be circumstances you did not choose. There may be delays you do not understand. There may be patterns that have followed you longer than you wanted. But before you decide what they mean, pause. The first meaning is often inherited. It comes from fear, from family, from old wounds, from culture, from the version of you that learned how to survive. But the deeper meaning must be chosen. That is the work of the conscious creator, not to control every event, but to become awake at the point where meaning is born, because meaning is the seed of reality. Plant a meaning and you plant an emotional state. Plant an emotional state and you plant a pattern of attention. Plant attention and you plant behavior. Plant behavior and you plant the future. This is not fantasy. This is the hidden architecture of experience. A man loses his job and calls it proof that life is over. Another man loses his job and calls it the beginning of his true work. A woman hears silence from someone she loves and calls it abandonment. Another woman hears the same silence and calls it space, clarity, or redirection. A person faces delay and calls it rejection. Another faces delay and calls it preparation. The outer event may look the same, but the inner meaning chooses the path. So here is the practice from the first page. For the next 24 hours, do not try to change your entire life. Do not force yourself to be positive. Do not pretend everything feels easy. Simply become a watcher of meaning. When something happens, pause before you explain it. If an email does not arrive, notice the story your mind begins to tell. If someone speaks with a different tone, notice the meaning you attach. If a plan changes, notice whether your mind calls it disaster, delay, rejection, or redirection. Then write down 3 simple lines. First, what happened? Second, what meaning did I give it? Third, what meaning would the new version of me choose? This is how the first page becomes alive, not by blind belief, not by forced optimism, but by recovering the power to choose the meaning before the meaning chooses your reality. And as you practice this, you will begin to notice something subtle. The world may not change all at once, but your relationship to the world will begin to change. And when your relationship to the world changes, your energy changes, your posture changes, your voice changes, the opportunities you notice change, the doors you walk toward change. And slowly, almost invisibly, life begins to answer a different version of you. This is why the ancient book begins here. Before attention, before emotion, before identity, before surrender, it begins with the first crack in the illusion. The world is not fixed. The first page does not ask you to change the world tonight. It asks you to stop calling your oldest interpretation the truth. Because the moment meaning becomes flexible, reality is no longer a prison. It becomes a doorway, and this is where bending reality begins. Not with force, not with fantasy, not with denial, but with the quiet realization that the meaning you choose today may become the world you live in tomorrow. Chapter 2, the second page. The mirror behind all circumstances. The second page of the ancient book does not open like a page. It opens like a mirror. There are no long paragraphs at first, no explanations, no instructions. Only a dark silver surface, old around the edges, clouded by dust, marked by fingerprints that seem older than your own life. And beneath that mirror, carved into the page, is one sentence. The world around you often reveals the world within you, not always literally, not always simply, and never as punishment. The ancient book is not saying every painful event was caused by you. It is not saying every loss, betrayal, delay, illness, or wound is your fault. That would not be wisdom. That would be cruelty dressed as spirituality. The book is pointing to something more subtle. A single event may happen and pass, but a repeated pattern asks to be studied. When the same wound returns through different faces, when the same fear appears in different rooms, when the same financial pressure, the same relationship anxiety, the same self-doubt, the same almost success keeps following you into new chapters of life, the ancient book asks you to pause, not to blame yourself, but to see yourself, because patterns are mirrors, and the mirror does not punish. The mirror reveals. In the autumn of 1948, in a narrow apartment in Boston, there lived a woman named Evelyn Carter. She worked as a secretary in a law office downtown, kept her shoes lined neatly by the door, stacked her bills by date, and tied her letters with string. From the outside, Evelyn looked calm, disciplined, and capable. But every evening, when the city lights began glowing through her kitchen window, the same ache returned. A familiar heaviness in her chest, a familiar question in her mind. Why do people always leave? She had asked it after her father disappeared from her childhood without explanation. She asked it again when her first love moved across the country and slowly stopped writing. She asked it when friends became distant, when men grew quiet, when someone she cared about needed space. To Evelyn, the answer was obvious. People leave. That was the law of her world. And because she believed this law, she entered every connection already listening for footsteps at the door. If a man was quiet, she heard distance. If a friend was busy, she heard abandonment. If someone needed time, she heard the beginning of goodbye. She did not realize she was not only reacting to people, she was reacting to a mirror from the past. The old wound had become a lens, and the lens had become a world. One winter night, after another relationship ended, Evelyn visited an elderly woman named Mrs. Whitaker, who lived in the apartment below hers. Mrs. Whitaker had once been a piano teacher, and even in her late 70s, she carried the stillness of someone who had listened deeply to life. Evelyn sat at the small wooden table while rain tapped softly against the window. She told Mrs. Whitaker everything: how people always changed, how love never stayed, how no matter how careful she was, she always ended up alone. Mrs. Whitaker listened without interrupting. Then she stood, walked to the hallway, and returned with a small hand mirror. Its silver frame was worn. The glass had dark spots near the corners. She placed it gently on the table. "Look," she said. Evelyn looked down. "I see myself," she answered. Mrs. Whitaker nodded. "Yes, but if the mirror is dusty, do you blame your face?" Evelyn said nothing. "If the glass is marked," the old woman continued, "you do not call the reflection truth. You clean the mirror." The room became quiet, and something inside Evelyn softened. Perhaps people had left. That pain was real. But perhaps she had been looking at every new person through the dust of everyone who had gone before. Perhaps she was not seeing love clearly. Perhaps she was seeing fear reflected through loves of face. This is the second page. The mirror behind all circumstances. It does not say your pain was imaginary. It says your pain may have become the glass through which you now see everything. And if the glass is not cleaned, even a kind person can appear dangerous. Even an opportunity can appear impossible. Even a blessing can appear temporary. Even love can appear like something already leaving. You may know this feeling. Perhaps you have entered a room already expecting judgment, so every neutral glance became criticism. Perhaps you have opened your bank account already expecting fear, so every number became proof that you are not safe. Perhaps you have begun something new already expecting failure, so every small mistake became confirmation that you should stop. Perhaps you have received a good opportunity, but some hidden part of you tightened, as if success itself was unsafe. This is how the mirror works. It does not always shout. It repeats. It repeats through people. It repeats through money. It repeats through timing. It repeats through the way your body reacts before your mind can explain why. A person with a hidden belief of unworthiness may keep choosing situations where they must prove themselves. A person with a hidden fear of rejection may keep finding signs of rejection, even where love is still present. A person with a hidden belief that money is dangerous may sabotage financial growth every time it begins to arrive. A person with a hidden belief that success brings pressure may stay just below the level of visibility they claim to want. And when the pattern repeats, they say, "This always happens to me." But the ancient book whispers, "Do not only ask why this keeps happening, ask what it keeps reflecting." This question changes the entire path, because you cannot bend a pattern you refuse to see. What remains unconscious repeats as fate. What becomes conscious becomes material for creation. This is where the mirror becomes sacred, not because it flatters you, but because it gives you your power back. Blame says, "You caused everything." Awakening says, "You can now see what was unconscious before." Blame makes you smaller. Awakening makes you responsible in a way that restores your freedom. That night, Mrs. Whitaker gave Evelyn a simple practice. "Before you decide what something means," she said, "ask which part of you is looking." So Evelyn began. When a friend did not return her call, she paused and asked, "Is the abandoned child looking? Or is the woman I am now looking?" When a man she cared about became quiet after a long workday, she paused and asked, "Is fear interpreting this? Or is trust available here too?" When loneliness rose inside her chest, she stopped turning it into prophecy. She stopped saying, "This means I will always be alone." Instead, she began saying, "This is an old wound asking for tenderness." At first, nothing dramatic happened. The city did not transform overnight. No perfect love appeared at her door. But Evelyn changed in small ways. She stopped interrogating silence. She stopped chasing reassurance with panic. She stopped making every moment responsible for healing her entire past. And slowly, the world around her began to feel different. Some people still left. Some connections were still not right, but leaving no longer defined her. Silence no longer ruled her. Distance no longer became instant doom. The mirror had been cleaned. And because the mirror was cleaner, the world she saw through it became different. The same law appeared in the life of Daniel Brooks, a grocery owner in St. Louis in the early 1950s. Daniel worked hard. He opened early, closed late, and treated his customers well. Yet no matter how much money came in, he always returned to pressure. When business improved, guilt appeared. He undercharged loyal customers. He avoided raising prices even when costs increased. He gave money to relatives he knew would never repay him. On the surface, Daniel said he wanted abundance. But beneath the surface, another belief was operating. People like me are not supposed to have too much. That belief was the mirror. And because he could not see it, he called the repeated struggle bad luck. One evening, while reviewing his accounts, he realized the truth. He was not losing money only because of the market. He was losing money because every time money came close, guilt opened the back door and let it leave. That realization did not make him wealthy overnight, but it made him conscious. And consciousness is where a new reality begins. He began to practice receiving without apology. He priced his goods fairly. He helped others without betraying his own stability. And every morning before opening the store, he repeated quietly, "I can serve people and still allow myself to prosper." That sentence cleaned the mirror. Not all at once, but enough for a new pattern to begin. This is the hidden law of the second page. Your circumstances may show you what happened, but your patterns show you what you believe. If something happens once, observe it. If something happens again and again, study it. Not with shame, with reverence, because a repeated pattern is not only a problem, it is a doorway. It is life pointing to the exact place where your inner world is ready to be healed, rewritten, or released. But remember this carefully. The mirror principle must be held with compassion. Without compassion, it becomes judgment. With compassion, it becomes liberation. When you notice that you expect rejection, do not shame yourself. That expectation may have been born from a real wound. When you notice that you fear money, do not insult yourself. That fear may have been inherited from a family that struggled for years. When you notice that you sabotage success, do not call yourself weak. That pattern may have been your nervous system trying to keep you safe from visibility, criticism, or pressure. The ancient book does not say, condemn the pattern. It says, bring light to the pattern, because what is brought into light can begin to change. What remains hidden keeps choosing for you. So here is the practice from the second page. Choose one pattern that has repeated in your life. Not everything, just one. A money pattern, a love pattern, a work pattern, a confidence pattern, a pattern of almost succeeding and then pulling back, a pattern of attracting people who need you but cannot truly meet you, a pattern of beginning with fire and stopping when fear appears. Write it down plainly. This keeps happening. Then beneath it, write, what does this pattern make me feel? Do not analyze too quickly. Feel first. Does it make you feel unseen, unsafe, unchosen, behind, trapped, not enough? Then ask, where have I felt this before? Maybe the answer comes from childhood, maybe from a betrayal, maybe from a failure, maybe from the beliefs your family carried about money, love, success, or safety. Maybe you do not know yet. That is okay. The purpose is not to solve your entire life in one night. The purpose is to stop calling the mirror your enemy. Now write one new sentence. Not a sentence so false your body rejects it. Not a performance. Not a dramatic affirmation shouted over fear. Choose something believable enough to enter you. If the old belief is, people always leave, the new sentence may be, I can learn to feel safe without clinging. If the old belief is, money never stays, the new sentence may be, I can become someone who receives, keeps, and circulates money with wisdom. If the old belief is, I always fail, the new sentence may be, every attempt is training the version of me who succeeds. If the old belief is, I am invisible, the new sentence may be, I am willing to be seen in ways that feel honest and safe. These sentences may seem small, but reality does not bend only through grand declarations. It bends through repeated inner agreements. One new agreement practiced sincerely begins to clean the glass. And when the glass changes, the reflection changes. As you move through the next 24 hours, watch the mirror gently. When someone triggers you, ask, what is being reflected? When money creates fear, ask, what belief is looking through my eyes right now? When an opportunity appears and your body tightens, ask, what part of me is afraid of receiving this? When love comes close and you want to run or cling, ask, is this the present moment or an old mirror? This practice will not make you perfect. It will make you conscious. And consciousness is where reality begins to soften. The second page does not ask you to control every circumstance. It asks you to become intimate with the patterns that keep meeting you. Because the mirror behind all circumstances is not there to trap you. It is there to return you to yourself. And once the mirror reveals the pattern, the next page asks a more dangerous question. Where has your attention been feeding it? Because what you continue to look at, you continue to give life to. And what you give life to long enough eventually begins to look like reality. Chapter 3, the third page. Attention is the hand that shapes the invisible. The third page of the ancient book does not show a mirror. It shows a hand, not a hand made of flesh, not a hand that can be seen in the ordinary world, but a hand made of light, reaching into the invisible, shaping something that has not yet become form. And beneath it, written in thin black ink, is the law that most people break without ever knowing it. What you continue to look at, you continue to give life to. This is the secret of attention. Attention is not passive. It is not merely noticing. It is not a small thing happening quietly behind your eyes. Attention is the hand that shapes the invisible. Every day, you are touching reality with your focus. You are feeding certain possibilities. You are starving others. You are watering some seeds and leaving others in the dark. And most people do this unconsciously. They say they want peace, but they give their attention to everything that makes them anxious. They say they want abundance, but they stare all day at lack. They say they want love, but they study rejection as if it were sacred scripture. They say they want a new life, but they keep replaying the old one with devotion. Then they wonder why nothing changes. But the ancient book is clear. Reality does not only respond to what you want, it responds to what you repeatedly attend to. In 1956, in a small apartment above a hardware store in Brooklyn, there lived a man named Marcus Reed. Marcus was 39 years old, a veteran, a bookkeeper, and a man who believed he was simply being realistic. Every morning, before he even finished his coffee, he opened the newspaper and searched for signs that the world was getting worse. A factory closing, a crime report, a political scandal, a warning about prices, a prediction of another recession. He read each headline with a tight jaw and called it staying informed. But something happened to him as the months passed. The world inside him began to shrink. When his wife mentioned a new opportunity, he saw risk. When a friend invited him into a small business idea, he saw failure. When his son talked about college, Marcus saw debt. When money came in, he immediately imagined how it would disappear. He did not understand that his attention had become a servant of fear. And fear, once fed long enough, does not remain a feeling. It becomes a lens. It becomes a voice. It becomes an atmosphere. It becomes a future you begin preparing for before it ever arrives. Marcus thought he was studying the world. But the ancient book would say he was rehearsing a reality. Each morning his attention reached into the invisible and shaped the same inner command: danger is coming, loss is coming, do not trust life, prepare for disappointment. And because he carried that command into every decision, he began to live smaller. He avoided opportunities. He rejected invitations. He spoke with suspicion. He tightened around money. He looked for what could go wrong. And because he looked for it with devotion, he found it everywhere. This is how attention bends reality. Not like a magic trick, not like a wish shouted into the sky, but like water carving stone, quietly, repeatedly, relentlessly. What you look at long enough begins to shape what you expect. What you expect begins to shape how you feel. What you feel begins to shape what you choose. What you choose begins to shape what you experience, and what you experience becomes the proof that your attention was right. This is why the third page comes after the mirror. The second page showed you the pattern. The third page asks, where has your attention been feeding it? A pattern cannot live without attention. Fear cannot grow without attention. Scarcity cannot dominate without attention. Rejection cannot become identity without attention. Even an old wound needs your attention to keep ruling the present. This does not mean you ignore pain. It does not mean you deny reality. It does not mean you pretend hard things are beautiful when they are not. The ancient book does not teach blindness. It teaches mastery. There is a difference between seeing a problem and worshiping it. There is a difference between acknowledging danger and building a temple around fear. There is a difference between checking your finances and staring at lack until your whole body becomes a prayer for more lack. There is a difference between learning from the past and kneeling before it every morning. Most people do not notice the difference. They think attention is harmless, but attention is devotion. Whatever receives your attention receives your energy. Whatever receives your energy receives influence. Whatever receives influence begins to organize your inner world. And your inner world, repeated long enough, begins to organize your outer choices. This is why two people can wake up in the same city, with the same weather, under the same economy, and still walk into different realities. One begins the day by feeding fear. The other begins by feeding clarity. One begins by checking everything that proves life is unsafe. The other begins by asking, what deserves my energy today? The first person spends the day defending against life. The second person spends the day participating in life. The city may be the same, but the attention is different. And because the attention is different, the reality begins to separate. Marcus did not understand this until he met a woman named Clara at the small library 3 blocks from his apartment. Clara was a retired schoolteacher, quiet, direct, and almost impossible to disturb. One afternoon, Marcus found her reading near the window while rain moved down the glass in thin silver lines. He complained about the newspapers, the economy, the neighborhood, the cost of food, the state of the country, and the foolishness of anyone who still believed good things could happen. Clara listened. Then she closed her book and said, Marcus, every morning you open the door of your mind and invite the whole world's fear to sit at your breakfast table. He frowned. I'm just paying attention, he said. No, Clara replied. You are paying with attention. The sentence stayed with him. You are paying with attention. That night, Marcus could not stop thinking about it. Attention was not free. Every headline had cost him something. Every fear he rehearsed had taken something from his nervous system, his imagination, his courage. Every hour spent studying what might go wrong had been an hour not spent seeing what could be built, repaired, chosen, or opened. For the first time, he realized he had not been protecting his future. He had been feeding the version of himself that was afraid to enter it. The next morning, Marcus changed one thing. He did not stop reading the news forever. He did not become naive. He did not pretend the world had no problems. He simply refused to give the first hour of his mind to fear. Instead, before opening the newspaper, he took out a small notebook and wrote 3 questions. What is still possible? What deserves my attention today? What kind of man do I become if I keep looking at fear? At first, it felt foolish. His old mind resisted. It wanted the familiar darkness. It wanted the headlines. It wanted the old proof. But Marcus stayed with the practice. 1 week passed, then 2, then a month. And slowly, something inside him began to loosen. He noticed a neighbor looking for help repairing shelves. He noticed that his son was not only talking about college with fear, but with hope. He noticed that the business idea his friend mentioned was not reckless, but carefully planned. He noticed that his wife had been trying to bring warmth into the house while he had been filling it with warnings. The world had not become perfect, but Marcus had stopped staring only at the evidence of collapse. And because his attention moved, his emotions moved. Because his emotions moved, his choices moved. Because his choices moved, his life began to move. This is the hidden power of attention. It does not always change reality in one dramatic moment. It changes the version of reality you are available to notice. And what you notice, you can choose. What you choose, you can practice. What you practice, you become. And what you become, reality begins to answer. Look at nature. A gardener knows that attention is not a thought. Attention is care. If she waters only the weeds and ignores the flowers, the garden does not ask what she intended. It grows what she fed. The soil does not say, "But you wanted roses." The soil responds to the water. Your inner world is the same. It does not respond only to your wishes. It responds to what you water every day. If you water resentment, resentment grows. If you water fear, fear grows. If you water possibility, possibility begins to take root. If you water gratitude, your eyes begin to find more to be grateful for. If you water courage, small actions begin to appear. This is not forced positivity. Forced positivity says, do not look at the weeds. Wisdom says, do not water only the weeds. There is a difference. The conscious creator does not deny what is painful. They simply refuse to make pain the center of the altar. They know attention is sacred currency. They spend it carefully. In the modern world, this law matters more than ever, because there are entire machines designed to steal your attention before you have chosen your direction. A phone beside your bed, a screen filled with comparison, a feed that turns strangers into judges, headlines that turn fear into habit, notifications that train your nervous system to remain interrupted. Before you have even asked what matters, the world has already asked you to look at 1,000 things that do not belong to your destiny. And if you are not careful, your life will not be shaped by your deepest intention. It will be shaped by whatever captured your attention most often. This is why some people feel exhausted before they have done anything. Their body is not tired first. Their attention is scattered first. Pieces of them are left in yesterday's conversation, tomorrow's worry, someone else's success, a stranger's opinion, a headline they cannot control, a memory they keep replaying, a fear they keep feeding, and then they wonder why they cannot feel powerful. Power requires gathered attention. A scattered mind cannot bend reality. It can only react to it. The ancient book says, gather the hand, gather the light, gather the force of your seeing. For attention is the beginning of command. This does not mean you must focus perfectly. It does not mean you must never feel fear. It does not mean your mind must become silent like a mountain at dawn. It means you must begin to notice where your attention goes automatically. Because where attention goes automatically, life eventually follows unconsciously. If your attention automatically goes to what is missing, your life becomes organized around absence. If your attention automatically goes to who might reject you, your body prepares for rejection before love has a chance to arrive. If your attention automatically goes to what could fail, your nervous system treats every opportunity like a threat. If your attention automatically goes to old mistakes, your future becomes crowded with ghosts. But when you reclaim attention, even gently, you reclaim the first tool of creation. A woman named Helen discovered this in Los Angeles in 1962. She was a young actress who had almost given up after years of auditions. Every rejection felt like proof that she was invisible. Each night, she replayed the faces of casting directors who barely looked at her. Each morning, she studied what other women had that she did not. Her attention had become a courtroom, and she was always on trial. Then an older acting coach gave her one instruction. For 30 days, he said, stop studying rejection. Study presence. So Helen began to watch herself differently, not with criticism, with attention. She noticed how she entered a room apologizing before she spoke. She noticed how her shoulders folded inward. She noticed how she gave more attention to the possibility of being dismissed than to the truth of what she could offer. So she changed the object of her attention. Before each audition, she stopped asking, "Will they choose me?" She began asking, "Can I enter this room fully here?" That question changed her body. Her breath deepened, her voice steadied, her eyes lifted. She did not book every role, but she was no longer auditioning from the reality of rejection. She was auditioning from the reality of presence. And eventually, people began responding to a different woman. Not because the whole industry changed, but because the version of her entering the room changed. Attention had moved. Reality answered. This is how subtle the work can be. A shift in attention becomes a shift in state. A shift in state becomes a shift in behavior. A shift in behavior becomes a shift in the way life meets you. And one day, what once seemed impossible begins to feel natural. So here is the practice from the 3rd page. For the next 24 hours, become a guardian of your attention. Not a soldier fighting every thought. A guardian. There is a difference. A soldier attacks. A guardian watches. A guardian protects the gate. Begin in the morning. Before you touch your phone, before you open a message, before the world enters your mind, sit for 1 minute and ask, what deserves my attention today? Do not answer from fear. Answer from identity. If you are becoming someone peaceful, ask what feeds peace. If you are becoming someone abundant, ask what feeds wisdom, value, and receiving. If you are becoming someone confident, ask what feeds courage. If you are becoming someone loved, ask what feeds openness without desperation. Then choose one thing to stop feeding for the next 24 hours. Not forever, just one day. Maybe you stop feeding comparison. Maybe you stop feeding the story that nothing works. Maybe you stop feeding the fear that one delay means failure. Maybe you stop feeding the habit of checking whether someone has responded. Maybe you stop feeding the old wound by replaying the same memory. Then choose one thing to water: a skill, a vision, a calm breath, a useful action, a grateful thought, a conversation that matters, a piece of work that belongs to your future, a small decision that proves you are no longer available to the old pattern. At the end of the day, write 3 lines. Where did my attention go automatically? What did I feed that I no longer want to grow? What did I water that belongs to the reality I am choosing? This practice may seem simple, but the first movements of reality are often simple. A door does not need to open all at once. It begins with the turning of a key. Attention is that key. And as you practice, you may discover something strange. Some fears become weaker when you stop feeding them. Some desires become clearer when you stop drowning them in noise. Some opportunities become visible when your attention is no longer trapped in the old wound. Some parts of you begin to return from places where they had been scattered for years. This is when power begins to gather again. Not loud power, not forceful power, quiet power. The kind that enters a room before you speak. The kind that changes what you notice. The kind that makes your choices cleaner. The kind that teaches reality to meet a more awake version of you. The 3rd page of the ancient book does not ask you to control the world. It asks you to stop giving your life force to the reality you say you no longer want. Because what you feed grows. What you study shapes you. What you rehearse becomes familiar. And what becomes familiar begins to feel like truth. So guard your attention. Gather it. Choose it. Place it where your future can find it. Because the invisible is always being shaped. And whether you know it or not, your attention is already shaping it. The only question is, are you shaping the reality you desire? Or are you still giving life to the one you are trying to leave behind? Chapter 4, the 4th page. Feeling gives the command its power. The 4th page of the ancient book does not open with a mirror. It does not open with a hand of light. It opens with a flame, a single blue flame, burning without a candle, without oil, without wood. It does not flicker in the wind. It waits. And beneath the flame, written in letters so dark they almost seem alive, are these words. A command without feeling is only a sound. This is the 4th page, the page most people misunderstand, because many people have learned to speak words of power without carrying the state that gives those words life. They repeat affirmations. They write goals. They say, I am abundant. They say, I am loved. They say, I am powerful. They say, everything is working for me. But beneath the words, their body whispers something else. Fear, doubt, desperation, suspicion. The silent expectation that nothing will really change. And the ancient book gives a warning here. Reality does not obey words alone. Reality listens to the state behind the words. Words are the shape. Feeling is the fire. Words are the arrow. Feeling is the force that sends it through the air. Words are the seed. Feeling is the life inside the seed. This is why two people can speak the same sentence and send two completely different commands into life. One says, "I am worthy," but says it while secretly begging the world to prove it. Another says, "I am worthy," and says it from a quiet inner recognition, as if remembering something that was always true. The sentence is the same. The command is not. Because the universe does not only hear your language, it hears your atmosphere. In 1967, in a small apartment in Queens, there lived a woman named Lydia Monroe. She was a nurse, 31 years old, careful with her money, kind to everyone around her, and exhausted in a way she could not explain. Every morning, before leaving for the hospital, Lydia stood in front of her bathroom mirror and repeated the same sentence 10 times. "I am safe." She had read it in a book. She had underlined it. She had written it on index cards. She had taped it to the mirror above the kitchen sink beside her bed. "I am safe, I am safe, I am safe." But each time she said it, her shoulders tightened. Her breath became shallow. Her eyes searched the mirror for evidence. Somewhere beneath the sentence, another message was stronger. "I am not safe yet. I am saying this because I am afraid. I need this to work. Please let this be true." And because that deeper message carried more feeling, it became the command her life kept receiving. Lydia did not understand why nothing changed. She thought the words were failing. But the words were not the problem. The state beneath them was. At the hospital, she expected criticism before anyone spoke. She expected bills before they arrived. She expected disappointment before plans were made. She expected exhaustion before the day began. She was not living from safety. She was performing safety while obeying fear. Then one evening, after a long shift, Lydia visited a small church near her apartment. Not because she was looking for religion, but because the building was quiet, warm, and open. Rain was falling outside. The pews were almost empty. Near the front sat an older man named Gabriel, a retired violinist who sometimes played soft music during evening services. Lydia sat several rows behind him, holding her coat tightly in her lap. After a while, Gabriel turned and noticed the tension in her hands. "You are carrying a storm," he said gently. Lydia almost laughed. "I'm trying not to," she answered. "I say the right words every morning. I tell myself I'm safe, but I don't feel safe." Gabriel nodded as if she had just named the secret. "Then stop trying to convince fear with words," he said. "Give your body a memory of safety." Lydia looked confused. Gabriel lifted his violin from its case. "Words speak to the mind," he said. "Feeling speaks to the whole being." Then he played a single note. It was not loud. It was not dramatic, but the sound entered the room like warm light. Lydia felt something loosen in her chest. Gabriel played slowly, one note at a time, until the rain against the windows seemed softer, until the room seemed less like a building and more like a shelter, until Lydia's hands, without her forcing them, began to open. "Now," Gabriel said. "Say it." Lydia whispered, "I am safe." This time, the sentence was different. Not because the words had changed, but because for one small moment, her body believed it enough to let the words enter. That night, Lydia understood the fourth page. A command becomes powerful when the body, the mind, and the feeling begin to agree. This does not mean you must feel perfect certainty before life can change. It does not mean you must eliminate all doubt. It does not mean fear makes you weak. It means the feeling beneath your words matters. A word spoken from panic is not the same as a word spoken from trust. A goal written from desperation is not the same as a goal written from inner authority. A prayer whispered from lack is not the same as a prayer whispered from gratitude. A vision held in fear is not the same as a vision held in quiet expectancy. The outer sentence may look identical, but the inner command is different. This is why some people repeat affirmations for years and feel nothing move. They are not affirming a truth. They are arguing with a fear. And fear often wins because fear is carrying more emotion. The ancient book does not say, "Stop speaking powerful words." It says, "Do not let your words travel alone. Give them feeling. Give them breath. Give them memory. Give them a state your body can recognize." Because feeling is the language the subconscious understands most deeply. The mind may accept an idea, but the body asks, "Is this safe to become?" If your body feels danger around success, success will be chased and resisted at the same time. If your body feels shame around money, abundance will be desired and pushed away at the same time. If your body feels terror around love, intimacy will be invited and guarded against at the same time. If your body feels unfamiliar with peace, calm may feel boring, suspicious, or temporary. This is why the fourth page is so important. You cannot command a new reality while your entire inner atmosphere is still worshiping the old one. The command must be felt, not dramatically, not perfectly, but sincerely enough that some part of you begins to recognize it as possible. Look at nature. A seed does not grow because someone writes the word flower above it. It grows because there is warmth, moisture, darkness, time. Life moving from within. Words are like the name written on the seed packet. Feeling is the life that wakes the seed. Without feeling, the word remains outside the soil. With feeling, the word enters the invisible and begins to become form. Lydia began a new practice after that night. She stopped forcing herself to say, "I am safe," while her body was locked in fear. Instead, each morning, she placed one hand on her chest and looked for one real memory of safety. Not a huge memory, not a perfect childhood, not a fantasy. Just something true enough to enter her nervous system. The warmth of a blanket, the sound of rain while she was indoors, the smell of coffee in a quiet kitchen, the feeling of a patient squeezing her hand in gratitude, the memory of her grandmother humming while folding laundry. She would breathe slowly and let that small memory create a small feeling. Then, only then, she would say, "I can return to safety inside myself." The sentence was softer than before, less dramatic, but more believable. And because it was believable, it began to enter. Over time, Lydia changed, not overnight, not like a sudden miracle, but steadily. She stopped bracing before every conversation. She stopped treating every bill like a threat to her survival. She stopped confusing exhaustion with destiny. She began to speak more slowly. She began to rest without guilt. She began to notice when safety was actually present, instead of only preparing for when it might disappear. The world around her had not become perfectly safe, but the state from which she met the world had changed. And because her state changed, her reality began to answer differently. This is the hidden law. You do not need to feel the full reality before it appears, but you must learn to feel the seed of it before you can live from it. A man who wants abundance does not need to feel like a millionaire before he can change, but he must begin to feel respect for money. He must begin to feel worthy of receiving. He must begin to feel stable enough to keep what comes. A woman who wants love does not need to feel completely healed before love arrives, but she must begin to feel safe enough to be seen. She must begin to feel open without abandoning herself. She must begin to feel chosen before someone else proves it. A person who wants confidence does not need to feel fearless, but they must begin to feel the first inch of inner permission, the first breath of self-trust, the first small flame of, "I can move even with fear beside me." This is how feeling gives the command its power. Not by exaggerating, not by pretending, but by becoming intimate with the state that belongs to the reality you are choosing. In 1974 in Denver, there was a young salesman named Robert Hale who learned this through money. Robert wanted prosperity. He studied success books. He wrote financial goals. He repeated, "Money flows to me easily." But every time a client was ready to buy, Robert's stomach tightened. When he had to name his price, his voice dropped. When money came in, he felt relief for a moment, then fear that it would vanish. His words said abundance. His body said danger. One afternoon, his mentor, a woman named Elaine, watched him lose a sale he should have closed easily. Afterwards, she asked, "What do you feel when someone is about to pay you?" Robert answered too quickly. "Excited." Elaine shook her head. "No, what do you really feel?" He sat in silence. Then the truth came out. "Guilty," he said, "like I'm taking something." Elaine nodded. "There is your command." Robert thought his command was, "Money flows to me." But the command beneath the command was, "Receiving is dangerous. Receiving makes me wrong. Receiving must be apologized for." So reality kept answering that deeper feeling. Elaine gave him a practice. Before every meeting, Robert had to sit for 2 minutes and remember a time when he had truly helped someone. He had to feel the value he brought. He had to breathe until receiving money no longer felt like taking, but like completing an exchange. Then he would say, "I receive in proportion to the value I give." At first it felt uncomfortable, then it felt possible, then it felt true. His voice changed, his posture changed, his pricing changed, his clients changed. Not because a sentence magically made him wealthy, but because feeling aligned with the command. And once the command changed inside him, his behavior stopped betraying his desire. This is what most people miss. Feeling does not only influence the invisible, it also changes how you move in the visible world. When you feel unworthy, you hesitate. When you feel unsafe, you cling or run. When you feel scarce, you make desperate choices. When you feel already defeated, you see effort as pointless. But when you feel even a small measure of worth, you stand differently. When you feel safety, you stop attacking the future. When you feel abundance, you notice possibilities you were too tense to see. When you feel chosen from within, you stop begging every person to confirm your value. The feeling becomes the posture. The posture becomes the action. The action becomes the path. The path becomes the reality. This is why the fourth page does not say, think the command. It says, become the atmosphere of the command. If you say, I am abundant, do not say it like someone trying to escape poverty. Say it by remembering one true way life has already supported you. Say it while feeling your ability to create value. Say it while respecting the money already in your hands, even if it is not yet the amount you desire. If you say, I am loved, do not say it while begging an absent person to return. Say it by feeling the part of you that is willing to stop abandoning yourself. Say it by remembering the kindness you have received, the kindness you have given, and the love that can begin as self-respect. If you say, I am powerful, do not say it like someone fighting their weakness. Say it while feeling one small choice you can make today. One boundary, one honest word, one completed action. One moment where you do not betray yourself. This is how commands become living things. They must be connected to feeling. They must be rooted in the body. They must be practiced until they no longer feel like performance. So here is the practice from the fourth page. Choose one command you have been speaking without feeling. Maybe it is, I am safe, I am abundant, I am loved, I am confident, I am free. I am becoming the person I was meant to be. Now pause, do not repeat it yet. First ask, what feeling would make this command true enough to enter me? If the command is safety, find one real memory of safety. If the command is abundance, find one real memory of receiving, giving, creating, or being supported. If the command is love, find one real memory of warmth, kindness, loyalty, or self-respect. If the command is confidence, find one real memory of courage, even if it lasted only 10 seconds. Let the feeling come first. Breathe into it. Do not force it to become huge. A small real flame is more powerful than a large false fire. Then speak the command slowly, not to convince the universe, not to impress the mirror, not to drown out fear. Speak it as if you are placing a seed into the dark soil of your own being. Once in the morning, once before sleep, and once during the day when the old reality tries to pull you back. Then watch. Watch how your body responds. Watch where the command feels blocked. Watch what memories rise. Watch what resistance appears. Do not fight it. Study it. Because resistance shows you where the old command still lives. And when you find the old command, do not curse it. Replace it with feeling. If the old command says, I am not safe, bring one breath of safety. If the old command says, I am not worthy, bring one memory of value. If the old command says, nothing works for me, bring one small moment where something did. You are not trying to lie to yourself. You are teaching your inner world a new emotional language, and slowly the command begins to carry power. The fourth page of the ancient book closes with a final line written beneath the blue flame. Reality does not move for empty words. It moves for the state that gives those words life. So speak carefully, feel honestly. Command from the place you are becoming, not the wound you are escaping. Because the invisible does not only receive what you say, it receives what you are. And when your words and your feeling begin to agree, something ancient awakens. The command is no longer a sentence. It becomes a signal. And reality, listening through the unseen architecture of your life, begins to answer. Chapter 5, the fifth page. Identity comes before proof. The fifth page of the ancient book does not open with a mirror. It does not open with a hand of light. It does not open with a blue flame. It opens with a mask. An old mask resting on dark velvet, cracked down the center as if someone once wore it for too long and forgot it was not their face. Beneath the mask, written in a line of faded gold, is the sentence that changes everything. Identity comes before proof. This is the page most people resist, because most people have been trained to wait. They wait for money before they feel abundant. They wait for love before they feel chosen. They wait for success before they feel powerful. They wait for confidence before they act with courage. They wait for the world to change before they allow themselves to become someone new. But the ancient book teaches the opposite. The outer world does not first give you proof so you can change your identity. Your identity changes first, then reality begins to gather proof around it. This is not pretending. This is not arrogance. This is not walking through life with empty confidence while avoiding responsibility. It is something far deeper. It is the recognition that you do not manifest only what you want. You manifest what you repeatedly accept as yourself. A desire is what you ask for. An identity is what you keep obeying. And reality responds more faithfully to what you obey than to what you request. In 1978, in a small town outside Cleveland, there lived a man named Arthur Miles. Arthur was 36 years old, worked at an appliance repair shop, and had a gift for solving problems no one else could understand. He could listen to the sound of a broken machine and know almost instantly where the issue lived. A loose belt, a failing motor, a wire about to burn out. People trusted his hands, but Arthur did not trust himself. For years, he dreamed of opening his own repair business. Customers often told him, "You should have your own place." His wife told him the same thing. Even his boss once said, half joking, "If you ever leave, half this town will follow you." But Arthur always laughed it away. "People like me don't run businesses," he would say. That sentence was his mask. He did not call it a mask. He called it realism. He called it humility. He called it knowing his place. But the ancient book would call it an identity. And because Arthur obeyed that identity, his life kept bending around it. Opportunities appeared, but he did not step toward them. Customers offered to pay him directly, but he felt guilty. A small storefront became available on Main Street, but he told himself the timing was wrong. His hands knew the work. His town knew his value. But his identity did not allow him to enter the room his ability had already prepared. This is one of the deepest traps in human life. A person can have the skill. A person can have the opportunity. A person can have the desire. But if their identity says, "That is not who I am," reality will seem to agree. Not because life is cruel, but because identity directs behavior before conscious thought can argue. If you identify as the person who always struggles with money, you may receive money and still find a way back to struggle. If you identify as the person who is hard to love, you may meet kindness and still search for evidence that it will disappear. If you identify as the person who never finishes, you may begin with passion and still abandon the path when the old self feels threatened. If you identify as the person who is always behind, every success will feel late, every milestone will feel insufficient, and every blessing will be measured against someone else's timeline. The mask does not need chains. It only needs repetition. Arthur's life changed on a Tuesday afternoon when an elderly customer named Mr. Bell came into the shop carrying a broken radio from the 1940s. The shop owner was away, so Arthur handled it himself. He repaired the radio in less than an hour. When Mr. Bell heard the old music come through the speaker, his eyes filled with tears. "My wife and I used to dance to this," he said quietly. "I thought I had lost the sound forever." He tried to pay Arthur extra, but Arthur refused. Mr. Bell looked at him for a long moment. "You know what your problem is?" the old man said. Arthur smiled awkwardly. "I have plenty." "No," Mr. Bell said. "Your problem is that you keep waiting for someone to name you what you already are." The words struck him. Mr. Bell continued. "You think a business owner becomes a business owner when the sign goes on the door, but the sign only announces what the man has already accepted inside himself." That night, Arthur could not sleep. He sat at the kitchen table after midnight while his wife slept upstairs. The house was quiet. The street outside was still. And for the first time, Arthur wrote the sentence he had been afraid to write. "I am the kind of man who can build something of my own." The sentence made his body tense. It felt too large, too dangerous, too unfamiliar. So he did not force himself to believe it completely. He wrote a smaller version. "I am willing to become the kind of man who can build something of my own." That sentence entered, not fully, but enough. The next day, Arthur did one small thing from the new identity. He wrote down the names of customers who had asked for his help outside the shop. The next week, he visited the empty storefront on Main Street. The week after that, he asked the owner about rent. Then he began saving with intention instead of fear. He did not become a different man overnight, but he began obeying a different identity. And once he obeyed a different identity, his choices changed. Once his choices changed, his evidence changed. Within a year, Arthur opened a small repair shop with his name painted modestly on the window. At first, he was terrified, but beneath the fear, a new command had begun to live. "This is who I am becoming." That is how identity bends reality. Not by pretending the road is easy, but by changing who you are willing to be while walking it. Most people do the opposite. They say, "When I see proof, I will believe. When I have more money, I will feel abundant. When someone chooses me, I will feel worthy. When I succeed, I will feel confident." When life finally changes, I will become peaceful. But this keeps power outside of them. It makes the world the author of their identity. And whatever you give authorship to, you give authority to. The ancient book warns, do not let circumstances name you. Circumstances can describe a season. They cannot define your soul. You may be in debt, but you are not debt. You may be single, but you are not abandonment. You may have failed, but you are not failure. You may be delayed, but you are not denied. You may feel afraid, but you are not fear. The old identity takes a temporary condition and turns it into a permanent name. The conscious creator does the opposite. They look at the condition and ask, who must I become here? What identity is this moment inviting me to practice? Not someday, now. Because identity is not only a thought you think. Identity is a role you rehearse. Every day you are rehearsing someone. The way you speak to yourself rehearses someone. The way you walk into a room rehearses someone. The way you handle disappointment rehearses someone. The way you receive money rehearses someone. The way you let love in or push it away rehearses someone. The way you start again after failure rehearses someone. And whatever you rehearse long enough begins to feel natural. Whatever feels natural begins to guide your behavior. Whatever guides your behavior begins to shape your outcomes. And your outcomes return as proof that the identity was true. This is why identity comes before proof. Proof is often the echo. Identity is the voice. In nature, an oak tree does not wait to become enormous before it carries the identity of an oak. Even as an acorn, it holds the pattern. It does not look like a forest yet. It does not have branches yet. It does not cast shade yet. But the code is already there. Its work is not to imitate a flower. Its work is to become what it already carries in essence. You are the same. There is a version of you that carries a different code. Not a fantasy version. Not a fake version. A truer version. The version that no longer begs to be chosen. The version that no longer worships scarcity. The version that no longer calls fear wisdom. The version that no longer needs the old wound to explain every room. The version that can receive without apology, act without proving, love without disappearing, and succeed without betraying the self. This version does not arrive because the world finally gives permission. It arrives when you stop asking the old identity for approval. A woman named Rachel learned this in 1985 in Phoenix. She had spent most of her adult life saying, I am not a creative person. Yet every night after her children were asleep, she filled pages with stories in cheap spiral notebooks. She wrote quietly, secretly, almost apologetically. When friends asked what she did for herself, she said, nothing much. When someone found one of her stories and praised it, she blushed and said, it's just a hobby. But the truth was clear. Rachel was not waiting to become a writer. She was writing. The only thing missing was the identity. One evening, her teenage daughter found a stack of notebooks in the closet and asked, Mom, why do you hide these? Rachel said, because I'm not a real writer. Her daughter looked at the notebooks and said, then why do you write like one? That sentence became Rachel's 5th page. She realized she had been waiting for publication to give her permission to name what her life was already proving. So she began quietly, not by announcing herself to the world, not by forcing confidence, but by changing the way she obeyed her identity. She stopped saying, I'm not a real writer. She began saying, I am practicing the life of a writer. She gave herself 1 hour every morning before the house woke. She submitted one story, then another. Most were rejected, but rejection no longer meant, I am not a writer. It meant, a writer has received a rejection. That difference is everything. The old identity collapses under rejection. The new identity interprets rejection as part of the path. The old identity says, this proves I do not belong. The new identity says, this is training. The old identity waits to be crowned. The new identity begins to walk. This is why identity is so powerful. It changes the meaning of every event. A failed attempt does not mean the same thing to someone who identifies as a failure and someone who identifies as a learner. A financial setback does not mean the same thing to someone who identifies as unlucky and someone who identifies as financially becoming wiser. A lonely season does not mean the same thing to someone who identifies as abandoned and someone who identifies as learning deeper self-trust. The event may be similar, but the identity receiving it is different, and so the reality created from it becomes different. This is where many people misunderstand manifestation. They think manifestation is about wanting harder, but wanting can still come from the old self. The old self can want wealth while still identifying with lack. The old self can want love while still identifying with unworthiness. The old self can want success while still identifying with invisibility. The old self can want peace while still identifying with chaos. And because the identity remains unchanged, the desire becomes decoration on the old structure. The ancient book does not ask, "What do you want?" Not first. It asks, "Who are you being while you want it?" Are you being the beggar of the outcome or the carrier of the state? Are you being the person waiting to be saved or the person learning to choose? Are you being the rejected one asking for love or the loved one learning to receive? Are you being the poor one begging for money or the wise steward learning to circulate value? Are you being the invisible one asking to be noticed or the present one willing to be seen? This is not about lying to yourself. It is about choosing the identity that makes the desired reality possible. A new reality cannot fully form around an identity that keeps rejecting it. If you say you want abundance but identify as someone who always loses money, abundance will feel foreign when it comes. If you say you want love but identify as someone who must earn affection through self-abandonment, healthy love will feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. If you say you want success but identify as someone who must stay small to stay safe, visibility will feel like danger. So the work is not only to ask, the work is to become compatible, to become the kind of person who can receive, hold, and live inside the reality they claim to desire. This is the deeper meaning of bending reality. You are not forcing life to give something to the old you. You are becoming someone reality must meet differently. So here is the practice from the 5th page. Take out a notebook. Write at the top, "The old identity I have been obeying." Then complete the sentence. I am the person who... Do not make it pretty. Be honest. I am the person who always struggles with money. I am the person who gets left. I am the person who starts but does not finish. I am the person who is never fully seen. I am the person who misses opportunities. I am the person who must work twice as hard to receive half as much. Now look at what you wrote. Do not hate it. Do not shame it. That identity was not created for no reason. It may have protected you once. It may have helped you survive rejection, uncertainty, disappointment, or pain. But survival identities are not always creation identities. The identity that helped you endure the past may not be the identity that can carry you into the future. Now write a second heading, "The identity I am willing to become." Again, do not write something your body rejects. Do not write, "I am a billionaire," if your nervous system cannot even receive $100 without guilt. Do not write, "I am perfectly confident," if your body is shaking. Write the next believable identity. I am becoming someone who handles money with calm and wisdom. I am becoming someone who can be loved without losing myself. I am becoming someone who completes what matters. I am becoming someone who allows myself to be seen one honest step at a time. I am becoming someone who notices and receives aligned opportunities. Then choose one small action that proves this identity today. Not a huge action. One action. If you are becoming financially wise, organize one bill, save $10, ask for fair payment, or track your spending without fear. If you are becoming loved without losing yourself, answer honestly, set one boundary, or stop chasing reassurance for one day. If you are becoming someone who finishes, complete one small task before beginning another. If you are becoming visible, share one honest idea, make one call, send one message, or stand a little taller when you speak. This is how identity becomes real, not through fantasy, through evidence you create on purpose, small evidence, repeated evidence, living evidence. The old identity was built through repetition. The new identity must be built the same way. Do not wait for the world to prove it first. You prove it in the smallest possible way. Then again, then again, then again, until your body begins to recognize the new self as familiar, until your choices begin to organize around it, until the world begins responding to the person you have been rehearsing in secret. 5th page closes with the mask split fully in two. Behind it, there is no stranger, only a face that looks like yours but freer, calmer, more awake, less willing to kneel before the names life once gave you. And beneath the broken mask, the ancient book leaves one final warning. If you keep obeying the old name, the old reality will keep answering. But if you choose a new identity and give it your attention, your feeling, your words, and your actions, reality begins to lose its grip on the old pattern, because proof does not create identity. Identity creates the path through which proof can arrive. So stop waiting for the world to name you. Stop waiting for circumstances to crown you. Stop waiting for evidence before you become. The door does not open for the person you pretend to be. It opens for the person you repeatedly practice being. And from this moment forward, Ask yourself before every choice. Which self is choosing this? The old mask, or the one I came here to become? Chapter 6, the 6th page. The backwards law of bending reality. The 6th page of the ancient book does not open with a mirror. It does not open with a hand of light. It does not open with a flame. It does not open with a mask. It opens with water. Clear water resting in a dark bowl so still that it seems untouched by time. And above the bowl, written in letters that appear only when the water becomes calm, is the law that most people spend their entire lives resisting. What you chase begins to run. What you force begins to resist. What you allow begins to move towards you. This is the backwards law of bending reality, and it is the most difficult page to understand because it seems to go against everything the world has taught you. You were taught that if you want something, you must chase it. If you want success, you must push harder. If you want love, you must hold tighter. If you want money, you must worry more. If you want a new life, you must control every detail until the universe finally obeys. But the ancient book gives a different warning. Force does not always create movement. Sometimes force creates resistance. Sometimes the very energy you use to grab the thing you want becomes the energy that pushes it away. This does not mean you stop acting. It does not mean you abandon your vision. It does not mean you sit still and call passivity spiritual. The backwards law is not laziness. It is not giving up. It is not pretending desire no longer matters. It is the art of holding a vision without strangling it. It is the art of moving with life instead of attacking life. It is the art of wanting without becoming desperate, acting without becoming frantic, and trusting without becoming passive. There is a difference between devotion and desperation. Devotion says, "This matters to me, so I will show up with clarity." Desperation says, "This must happen or I am nothing." Devotion creates power. Desperation creates resistance, and reality can feel the difference. In 1989, in a small coastal town in Maine, there lived a man named Nathan Cole. Nathan owned a modest furniture workshop behind his house, where he made tables, cabinets, and wooden chairs with the patience of someone who loved the grain of wood more than the praise of people. For years, Nathan worked quietly. He shaped each piece by hand. He sanded corners until they felt smooth beneath the palm. He chose wood carefully, listened to customers deeply, and treated each object as if it would become part of someone's family history. But as business slowed, fear entered him. Orders became less steady, bills became louder, other shops began advertising aggressively, and Nathan, who had once worked from love, began working from panic. He lowered his prices until there was almost no profit. He called customers repeatedly after sending estimates. He rushed pieces that should have taken time. He checked the mailbox every morning with a tight chest. He redesigned his signs, changed his offers, and stayed awake at night calculating every possible disaster. He told himself he was being responsible, but something had changed. The work still looked like furniture making, but the energy behind it had become fear, and customers could feel it. The calmness that once filled his workshop disappeared. Conversations became tense. His hands, once steady, began to make small mistakes. People who had once trusted him began to hesitate, not because his skill had vanished, but because his presence no longer carried certainty. Nathan was chasing survival, and the more he chased, the more life seemed to step back. One evening, after a long day with no orders, Nathan walked down to the harbor. Fog moved over the water, the boats rocked softly in their slips. An older fisherman named Elias was tying a rope near the dock. Nathan had known him for years. Elias looked up and saw the exhaustion in Nathan's face. "You look like a man trying to pull the tide with both hands," he said. Nathan gave a tired laugh. "That would be easier than keeping my business alive." Elias tied the last knot, then pointed toward the water. "Watch that boat," he said. Nathan looked. A small fishing boat drifted gently with the tide, held by a rope, but not fighting the movement of the water. "If you tie it too tight," Elias said, "the rope snaps. If you leave it loose enough, the boat stays with the dock and still moves with the sea." Nathan said nothing. Elias continued. "Most men think control means no movement, but the sea teaches otherwise. You hold the line, but you do not fight the tide." The words entered Nathan like a key. You hold the line, but you do not fight the tide. That night, Nathan understood the 6th page. He did not need to abandon his business. He needed to stop strangling it. He needed to return to the state from which the work had once lived. The next morning, he did something that felt almost impossible. He stopped calling customers in panic. He stopped lowering his prices out of fear. He cleaned the workshop. He slowed down. He completed one chair with the same devotion he had given his work in the beginning, not because he had proof things would improve, but because he refused to let fear become the master craftsman of his life. Then he wrote a sentence on a piece of paper and placed it above his workbench. I keep the vision. I release the struggle. I let the path reveal itself. At first, nothing changed. No flood of customers arrived that afternoon. No miracle knocked on the door. But Nathan changed. His breathing changed. His hands steadied. His voice softened. When customers entered the workshop, they felt the old presence again. Not need, not pressure, not panic dressed as service. They felt craftsmanship. They felt trust. They felt a man who was no longer trying to squeeze life into obedience. Within weeks, one customer returned. Then another. Then a woman from Portland ordered a dining table after seeing one of his pieces in a neighbor's home. The business did not explode overnight, but the resistance softened. The tide began to move again. This is the secret hidden inside the backwards law. You cannot receive clearly while your hands are clenched around the outcome. A clenched hand cannot receive. It can only grip. And many people live this way without realizing it. They grip love until love cannot breathe. They grip money until every dollar becomes a source of fear. They grip success until their work loses its soul. They grip healing until even peace becomes another thing to achieve. They grip manifestation until desire turns into pressure. And then they wonder why the thing they want feels farther away. The ancient book does not tell you to stop desiring. Desire is sacred. Desire is direction. Desire is the soul pointing toward expansion. But desperation is different. Desperation is desire infected with fear. Desperation says, if this does not happen, I am not safe. If this person does not choose me, I am not worthy. If this money does not arrive, I am powerless. If this door does not open, life has abandoned me. Desperation makes the outcome responsible for your identity. And anything made responsible for your identity becomes too heavy to move freely. Love cannot relax under that weight. Money cannot flow under that weight. Creativity cannot breathe under that weight. Opportunity cannot approach without being grabbed, questioned, measured, and feared. This is why letting go is not weakness. Letting go is removing the weight of desperation from the desire. You still want, you still choose, you still act, but you stop turning the outcome into your God. You stop kneeling before one door as if the entire universe has only one entrance. You stop confusing timing with rejection. You stop digging up the seed every morning to see if it has grown. Look at nature. A farmer plants a seed, he waters it, he tends the soil. He protects it from what would destroy it. But he does not dig it up every night to check whether it trusts him. He does not scream at the dirt. He does not pull at the tiny root and call that growth. He understands a law many people have forgotten. There is a kind of action that supports life, and there is a kind of action that interrupts it. Inspired action supports, fearful control interrupts. The difference is not always in the action itself. It is in the state behind the action. You can send a message from love, or you can send the same message from panic. You can work on your business from devotion, or you can work from terror. You can save money from wisdom, or you can save money from the belief that disaster is always near. You can improve yourself from self-respect, or you can improve yourself because you secretly believe you are not enough. The outer action may look the same. The inner command is different, and reality responds to the command beneath the action. This is why the backwards law is not about doing nothing. It is about acting from alignment instead of fear. It is about knowing when to move and when to release, when to plant and when to wait, when to speak and when silence carries more power, when to choose and when to stop checking whether the universe has obeyed quickly enough. A woman named Marisol learned this through Love in Santa Fe in 1994. She had spent years trying to become chosen. Every relationship began with hope and quickly became strategy. She watched tone. She counted hours between replies. She studied every shift in energy. She tried to become easier, prettier, softer, more impressive, less demanding, more available. She called it love, but it was fear. The more she tried to secure love, the less secure she felt. The more she chased closeness, the more the men she dated seemed to drift. Then one afternoon, after a painful breakup, Marisol sat with her Aunt Lucia on a porch while the desert wind moved through the dry grass. I do not understand, Marisol said. I give so much. I try so hard. Why does love keep leaving? Lucia looked at her gently. Because you are not letting love meet you, she said. You are auditioning for it. The sentence hurt because it was true. Marisol had not been standing in love. She had been standing in the fear of not being chosen. so every gesture carried a hidden request. Please prove I am enough. Please do not leave. Please make me safe. Lucia placed a hand over Marisol's hand and said, the one who belongs in your life should meet you where you are real, not where you are performing. That became Marisol's practice. She did not stop wanting love. She stopped chasing proof of worth through love. She began asking, what would I do if I already belonged to myself? How would I speak if I did not need to earn my place? What would I stop offering if I trusted my own value? Slowly, her energy changed. She stopped over-explaining. She stopped abandoning her needs to keep someone close. She stopped turning every silence into a test. And when love came again, she did not grab it by the throat. She let it breathe. Some people left more quickly because they could no longer feed on her fear, but the ones who stayed met a truer woman. This too is bending reality, not manipulating another person, not forcing love to obey, but removing the desperation that made false love look necessary. The backwards law teaches that what is aligned does not need to be chased in panic. It needs to be met in readiness, and readiness is not the same as control. Readiness says, I am available, I am prepared, I am open, I am willing to act when the path is clear. Control says, it must happen this way, it must happen now, it must come through this person, it must arrive through this door, it must prove I am safe. Control narrows reality, readiness opens it. Control grips one path, readiness allows the unseen to bring another. Control demands signs, readiness becomes the sign. This is why the 6th page is placed after identity. Because if you have not begun to shift your identity, surrender will feel like death. The old identity cannot let go because it thinks letting go means losing everything. The new identity can let go because it knows its power does not come from one outcome. The old identity chases because it feels empty. The new identity acts because it feels aligned. The old identity says, I need this to become whole. The new identity says, I choose this from wholeness. That difference changes the field. A person who acts from lack creates pressure. A person who acts from wholeness creates invitation. And reality moves differently around invitation than it does around pressure. So here is the practice from the 6th page. Choose one thing you have been chasing, gripping, or over-controlling. A relationship, a financial outcome, a business result, a message, a sign, a timeline, a version of yourself you are trying to force into existence. Write it down. Then ask honestly, what am I making this outcome mean about me? Am I making it mean I am worthy, safe, chosen, powerful, successful, free, loved? If the answer is yes, then you have placed your identity inside the outcome. And that is why the outcome feels heavy. Now breathe. Place one hand over your chest. Say slowly, I keep the vision. Then breathe again. Say, I release the struggle. Breathe again. Say, I allow the path to reveal itself. This is not a sentence of defeat. It is a sentence of alignment. It means I will still act, I will still show up, I will still prepare, I will still become. But I will no longer poison the path with desperation. I will no longer turn timing into terror. I will no longer make one door responsible for my destiny. I will no longer confuse surrender with weakness. For the next 24 hours, practice aligned action. Do one thing that supports the vision. Only one. Send the honest email, clean the workspace, complete the task, save the money, speak the truth. Take the walk, make the call, practice the skill, create the page. But do it without checking every 5 minutes whether reality has rewarded you yet. Plant the seed, water it, then let the soil work. This is the discipline of the conscious creator. Not constant force, consistent alignment, not frantic motion. Clear movement, not obsession, devotion. And when the old fear returns, as it likely will, do not fight it. Notice it, name it, then return to the sentence. I keep the vision. I release the struggle. I allow the path to reveal itself. Over time, this practice changes you. Your nervous system begins to learn that desire does not require panic. Your mind begins to learn that action does not require desperation. Your body begins to learn that waiting does not mean losing. Your identity begins to learn that it is not dependent on one outcome arriving exactly when and how the old fear demanded. And from that state, reality has more room to move. You begin to see doors you missed when you were staring at one locked handle. You begin to hear guidance you could not hear while arguing with silence. You begin to recognize opportunities that panic would have dismissed. You begin to act with cleaner energy. You begin to receive without grabbing. This is why the water on the 6th page must become still before the letters appear. A disturbed surface cannot reflect clearly. A desperate mind cannot receive clearly. A clenched identity cannot create freely. Stillness is not the absence of desire. Stillness is desire without panic. Stillness is power that has stopped begging. Stillness is the place where the vision remains alive, but the fear no longer holds the steering wheel. The ancient book closes the 6th page with one final image. The bowl of water begins to ripple, not from force, not from a hand striking it, but from a single drop falling gently into the center. One drop, then circles, then wider circles, then the whole surface moving from the smallest point of contact. This is how reality bends. Not always through violence, not always through effort, not always through control. Sometimes through one clean inner shift, one released grip, one action taken from trust, one desire held without desperation, one moment where you stop chasing what you want and become available to receive what is aligned. The world does not always respond to the hand that grabs. Often it responds to the one that opens. So open the hand. Keep the vision. Release the struggle. Let the path reveal itself. Because what is truly aligned with you does not need your panic to find you. It needs your presence. It needs your readiness. It needs the version of you who can receive without fear. And when you become that version, reality no longer needs to be forced. It begins to move. Conclusion: the book closes, but the reality opens. The ancient book now begins to close. But something within you has already opened. You began this journey believing reality was something outside you, something fixed, something heavy, something already decided before you arrived. But page by page, the old illusion began to crack. The first page revealed that the world is not fixed. Reality is not only what happens. Reality is what happens passing through the meaning you give it. The second page showed you the mirror behind all circumstances, not to blame you, not to shame you, but to reveal the patterns that have been quietly asking for your awareness. The third page taught you that attention is the hand that shapes the invisible. What you continue to look at, you continue to feed. What you continue to feed, you continue to strengthen. What you strengthen long enough begins to feel like truth. The fourth page revealed that feeling gives the command its power. Words alone are not enough. A command without feeling is only a sound. But when your words, your breath, your body, and your inner state begin to agree, the command becomes a signal. The fifth page broke the mask. It showed you that identity comes before proof. You do not wait for the world to name you before you become. You become, and the world begins gathering evidence around the self you are brave enough to practice. And the sixth page gave you the deepest paradox of all. What you chase begins to run. What you force begins to resist. What you allow from alignment begins to move toward you. This is the hidden art of bending reality, not by controlling every event, not by pretending pain does not exist, not by forcing the universe to obey your fear, but by becoming so conscious of your meaning, your patterns, your attention, your feeling, your identity, and your grip on the outcome that life can no longer reflect the unconscious version of you in the same way. You do not bend reality by fighting it. You bend reality by becoming the version of yourself that reality must answer differently. This is not fantasy. This is responsibility, a deeper responsibility than most people are willing to carry. Because once you understand these pages, you can no longer say, "I have no power here." In the same way, you may not control every circumstance. You may not choose every delay. You may not decide every person's action, every closed door, every season, every storm. But you can choose the meaning you give. You can study the pattern. You can reclaim your attention. You can feel the seed of the reality you are entering. You can practice the identity before the world gives you applause. You can keep the vision and release the struggle. That is where your power returns, quietly, steadily, without needing to prove itself. The book closes, but the practice begins. When you wake tomorrow, the same world may appear around you, the same room, the same phone, the same responsibilities, the same unfinished questions. But you will not be exactly the same one looking at them. And that is where reality begins to open, because a different observer finds different doors. A different identity makes different choices. A different inner state sends a different command, and a different command, repeated with sincerity, begins to call forth a different world. So do not rush away from what you have heard. Carry one page with you, only one. Choose the page that spoke to the hidden part of you. Maybe it is meaning, maybe it is the mirror, maybe it is attention, maybe it is feeling, maybe it is identity, maybe it is surrender. Practice it for the next 24 hours. Not perfectly, honestly. Let this ancient knowledge become more than something you heard. Let it become something you live. And if this journey awakens something in you, write these words below. I shape reality from within, not as a wish, not as a performance, as a declaration. Because the final secret of the book is this: you were never merely trapped inside reality. You were always participating in its creation. And now that you know this, the old world may still call your name, but you no longer have to answer as the old self.